How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another edition of LandO's Lock-ins, the series in which we do our darndest. We do our very best to make the most accurate CDL pick-up predictions possible. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you back to your favorite pick-em series. The series in which we go through my pick-em process. We talk about the games. We give our predictions. You guys get involved in the comments. I love seeing your guys' predictions down in the comments, your thoughts on some of my series predictions. It's a blast. I absolutely love this series. I hope that you guys do too. And we are in the middle of Major 4 right now. Not long from now, a bunch of these teams are going to be headed to Ohio for our 4th major. It's going to be a blast. It's going to be a great time. But let's go ahead and take a look at how we did in week number 1. Sometimes we see success and sometimes we don't. Let's go ahead and jump into week 1. We finish off 6-4, which is directly indicated by our overall series score so far throughout this year. 84 dubs, 63 L's. Not great, but it's not terrible either at the same time. Quickly into these, I talked about how game 1, game 3, both of these absolutely had the chance to go the way that they actually ended up going. I went for the safer pick in Boston, did not work out. Went for the safer pick in FaZe, that did not work either. Otherwise, just expected Toronto to win. We'll talk about them without question more here in this episode, but yeah, an 0-2 week for Toronto. Not many expected that to go down. That is for sure. So 4 L's there. We did correctly predict Minnesota winning their home series games, which was wonderful. And then from there, nothing too out of the ordinary, nothing too crazy. That's for sure. So let's go ahead and jump in now to week number 2, our slate of 10 games. There's been a lot of interesting things that have actually gone down this week. Typically, the hump week, if you want to call it that, in our majors are a little slow. This time, we actually have some roster changes that have gone down between 2 of our teams. So we will definitely be discussing that. And really, in our first series, this is a chance to talk about it. Boston Breach, surprising move. They bring in Kremp for Vivid. A lot of people very surprised by that decision. I will say I was as well. Boston, they're just off of a nice little win versus the Toronto Ultra. They've started off 1-1, not bad. They do have a pretty tough schedule ahead of them. So maybe this was Breach preparing for a very difficult, few matches that are ahead of them outside of this one versus London. I'll just go and put it that way. And we'll go bring up the fan poll as well while we talk about this. I will say though, in relation to this roster change, I don't have a whole lot to talk about it because I honestly don't really know the method or the reasoning behind it. I don't know if it's an internal problem, if it's just the coaching staff saw something where they're like, hey, you know what? Now's the time. Now's the time to get Vivid out of here. Now's the time to get Kremp in here. I know Kremp has actually been a pretty hot prospect by a lot of teams out there. I know he has definitely had a few teams ring his line for sure. So excited to see him make his debut. I've actually been very excited to see him eventually be in the CDL, and now's the opportunity for him. But I will say in relation to Vivid's departure from Breach, at least the starting lineup for now, I have always been a bit apprehensive about the SMG line for Breach, right? Very fast-paced, a very, I don't know, I want to say like hit or miss, but it definitely has the chance for both Vivid and Nero to be inconsistent. I think we can all talk about that. I mean, it's been the case for a while, ever since this team formed in Vanguard, right? I mean, the ability for those two is unbelievable. The talent that they have is sensational, but you do have those opportunities. You do have those series where if they're not firing, if they're not, maybe at the top of their game, the team really can struggle quite a bit. And so I've always been hesitant to want to elevate Breach to the highest level because I've never seen a super solid, consistent few game stretch where Vivid and Nero are at the top of their game. They're dominating, et cetera, et cetera. I also do think that potentially, I don't know if it really affects this team in this game, but moving forward, it feels like for Breach, having Vivid and Nero sometimes can actually dramatically affect your map pool, right? Because you have 2 very fast and aggressive SMG players. If you're thinking long range fights, you'd rather have those guys in positions where they're dominant up close. And so, however, the method, the thought process behind Breach, I'm not exactly sure. And I'm always one to say that typically, most of the time, I actually am in favor of teams making roster changes that may come surprising to the community. It really was the case with the OPTIC and Illy roster change. A lot of people thought that they should not be making changes. My thought process is there's a reason probably why they're making a roster change. And so we could debate on, who was picked up, whether or not that was the right choice. But if it is internal problems, there is no way that the COD community is going to know the inner workings of CDL franchises very often. So that very well could be what, supported this decision. I'm not exactly sure. So it's a big week for Boston. It is a great opportunity for Crimp. On his debut, he is taking on another recent rookie in Hewley for the London Royal Ravens. And I hate to say it, but hopefully for Boston, they start off much better with their new team than London has. 0-2, 100-point clubbed. I think they get 70 points versus OPTIC Texas, but 100-point clubbed. And both the hard points, they've got dominated in S&D. They've got dominated in control. 0-6 so far in maps. 0-2 in series. Good heavens. What in the world has happened to the London Royal Ravens? I gave them a nod in LandO's tiers, being like, hey, I feel good about this team. They put a lot of rosters close in the Major 3. They make a roster change. I really am in favor of this team trying to get even better. And they have gotten horribly worse. So I'm just going to go ahead and give this prediction instantly. It's going to be a 3-0 for Boston Breach. It's just, London's going to have to show me something. Like, London's going to have to show me something. Until they win a map, am I going to award them with one? Ravens, again, just, oh God, not a great situation so far here for London. We'll see if they can begin to turn things around. But the way that you've started, I mean, if they go down 0-2 in this series, it's going to be over quick in my eyes. Let's go ahead and jump into our next matchup: Seattle Surge versus Florida. Surge 1-1 after two very tough series in their opening week versus Thieves and Ultra. Seattle, a nice and welcoming sight so far in Search Destroy for them. We know Major 3 qualifiers, they started to turn things around in Search. They go to the Texas Major. They can no longer win Search Destroys. And now so far here in the Major 4 qualifiers, it now does seem like they can win Search Destroy again. They should be 3-0. Currently have the record of 2-1. They were up 4-1 versus the LA Thieves. They ended up losing that. And then from there, they also ended up losing the series. I don't know. Like, I feel like for Surge, it's still difficult to know exactly where this team is. As we know, outside of their last placement, they're always going to be either very much so at the top or very much so at the bottom. It is all about Surge, and it's all about team victories. They had that versus Toronto Ultra, was very much so a team victory in that series. Accuracy was playing phenomenal throughout both of these games. And so it did feel like we were starting to finally see the Seattle that is necessary if they want to win championships. The issue is that it feels like now the hard points are not really coming in as often as they should be. They started off Major 4 qualifiers. They lose both to the Thieves, which to me should not be happening. You should definitely take one of those. They do lose that Fortress hardpoint versus Toronto, but they did take the opening Hydro, which was very, very back and forth. That was actually one of the more chaotic spawns that we've seen on Hydro so far throughout this year. So who knows how that goes. But for Surge, again, not exactly sure how to feel about them. I think, given team success, it is nice. But they've got a pretty interesting schedule ahead. They've got Florida, FaZe, and LAG still left up here in the Major 4 qualifiers. On the other side for Florida, another team that did make a roster change, Havoc, is actually being taken to the bench. In the meantime, it does sound like it is more of a personal reason. So I do wish the very best for Havoc and whatever may be going on with him. Do hope that he does return back really as soon as he needs to, which is all that you can really ask for. So hoping and we're wishing the absolute best for him. In the meantime, Vikal is going to return back to the Florida Mutineers, which is interesting. It's also very interesting timing right now for the Florida Mutineers, given the fact that they just had actually a good series versus Atlanta FaZe. They take them to a game 5. They beat them on Embassy, which is unbelievable. FaZe's first loss on Embassy Search Destroy this year. Did come in around 11. Florida also decided to face off against them on Mercado, which is crazy. That is also one of FaZe's, if not FaZe's second best Search Destroy. They were not able to take that one. It would have been crazy if they did. So good moment for Florida. They also beat them on an Embassy hardpoint, which I always think is impressive to beat FaZe on a map like that, given how SMG heavy that it is. Capsule played much better, and then all of a sudden, a bright spot for Florida, and now they have a roster change come in. Is that going to be beneficial? Is it not? We will see. But again, for the Florida Mutineers, to me, it is all about if they can win Search Destroy. We know that they can be competitive at times. In Hardpoint, they can definitely trade one here or there given the right map. But to me, it is all about their Search. We will see if maybe that can start to improve or not. But I feel like in this series, the problem for Florida, and again, you're obviously making a roster change. There's a lot of things that are going to have to come into this. But the problem, it feels like for me, when it comes down to Florida, is that they are technically facing off against a better version of themselves. Like a team that's better than you in hardpoint, a team that is also technically better than you in search destroy, and a team that is also better than you in your controls, or at least more consistent, I would say, in the controls. So it's a tough matchup for Florida here. I do think that there is a chance where they maybe could come through, possibly win a map, but I'm going to side with the fan pool on this one. I think this is a 3-1 potential, maybe of it going game 5. As I said, Seattle are going to be much more cleaner when it comes down to their HPs, but I do feel like we see a much better version of Surge in their hard points. I think they have the ability to win search destroys. So we'll see how this one goes. Like I said, to me, if Florida's able to win that game 3 control somehow, I think they win the series. But that is a tall task, a tough ask out of the Mutineers here in this one. So let's go and take a look at our last match of the day. To me, probably the most intriguing one, depending on how you look at it. Minnesota versus New York. I'll go and pull up the fan poll for this. A lot of people favoring NYSL, maybe not taking the bait from what we saw out of Minnesota in their home series. They've basically been the story so far of Major 4 as far as I'm concerned. It's only been 1 week, but we were at their land. We were watching them play in front of their home crowd in Madison, Wisconsin, which was unbelievable. Massive shout out to Rocker for doing that. I hope we see more teams doing it. I know there was a lot of people talking about it on the timeline, whether or not it was fair. I definitely agree that, in terms of, being able to play on land, being able to play back-to-back games definitely has an impact. But at the same time, focus up, just play COD, and let's just move forward. Let's be happy that somebody is putting in some wonderful effort to their fans, to the fan base, trying to grow the scene. I very much appreciate it. And I think that we all should as well. So let's just put the conversation to bed. Let's move forward and let's talk about it. For Rocker, after losing 8 series in a row, 11 search destroys in a row, they've started off Major 4 pretty much flawless. They lose 1 game to LAG. Other than that, they have won everything else. They've also gone 2-0 in search destroys. Fame has had a wonderful debut to the league. I believe he has the number 2 highest overall debut KD in CDL history, just behind Standy back in Cold War. Very impressive. Have liked a lot of what I've seen from Fame. The biggest thing for me, though, is that this is going to actually be the test for Rocker, right? You're no longer in front of your home crowd. Boom, that's gone. You're no longer on stage. Boom, that's gone. And now you're not facing off against 2 teams who are in the bottom 4. You're facing off against NYSL. You're facing off against a team who just took down the Atlanta FaZe. A team that, to me, is going to be pretty formidable when it comes down to this matchup. Like I said, NYSL off of the huge Game 5 Round 11 victory versus Atlanta. The biggest thing for me for NYSL is that their struggles are translating things from online to LAN. Like I said, being online, I think this team feels comfortable. I feel like this team is very, very solid in hardpoint right now. I don't know exactly how the records are looking across the board for them lately, but just in general, I feel like they're going to be in a good position when it comes down to that mode. So Minnesota very well could have their hands full when it comes down to that. My biggest thing for New York is just simply about winning search destroys more consistently, and then also what is control going to look like for them. They just did lose Fortress Control. That was their best map and mode throughout their entire map pool. That is now gone. How do you play on Expo? Because we know that you can win hard points, right? That is without question. I think they're the number 2 or number 3 team in the game in that. But can you win online S&Ds? Can you win controls that are not named Fortress? So that is, to me, I think that without question, the thing to look out for NYSL. If the answer is yes, they're going to be in a wonderful position. If not, then we could start to see them maybe having a few of these spotty moments consistently. I am going to go with the bigger guarantee. I think in this series, we all know a lot more about New York than we know about Minnesota. However, I do think that this has the chance to go to a Game 5. I do. I'm going to go ahead and give the Minnesota Rocker 2 maps. I think this team is definitely going to be in much better shape. I think they're a solid team, but I just think here for New York, they are the better guarantee. Like I said, this is going to be Minnesota's first and real test. I think they do play well, but I don't think that they are able to take down NYSL in this series. But this is a huge game for seeding. That's the reason why we're talking about it. Minnesota had the chance to distance themselves that much more from Las Vegas. They have the chance to actually catch Seattle potentially if Surge does not win their opening game. So there's a lot of moving pieces in this opening day of matches when we talk about the top 8 already. Let's go and jump into our next game. Vegas Legion taking on the London Royal Ravens. Vegas, very impressive win over the Boston Breach. They win both of those hard points. They still lose a control, and it's on Expo, which is pretty annoying. I was really hoping that Vegas could start to actually get better at control with this new map coming in. We'll see as time goes on, maybe how they can improve on it. But I'd like to see them play much more Expo. We'll see how they get when it comes down to that mode. I know there are some Vegas frustrations at Rockers, 2 series back to back. I know we've already chatted about it, but looking ahead, the series, the schedule for them doesn't get much better. Like if there is a moment to complain and be like, yeah, we're trying to catch Minnesota, it's unfortunate they got to play back to back games. I understand it. At the same time, look at the schedule that you have up next. They have London, who should be 0-3 by this point. You have LAG on Sunday, who also have yet to win a series at this point. Toronto, right? You're facing off against the Ultra squad, who technically has yet to win a series up to this point. You're facing off against Florida, who right now is 0-2. So right now, their next 4 games are against teams who at this current moment have yet to win a series. 0-7, and very well that number could be 0-9, I think, or 0-8 after London and Florida play on the opening day. So I think for Vegas, they are actually in a fantastic position. This series versus Ravens, I think you try to get it over as quick as possible. Do not give London any hopes, any chances of staying alive. And I do hope that at some point, maybe we could see something from London. Like I think for sure. Like they possibly could be 0-9 in series count, or rather 0-9 in map count, 0-3 in series count. I know I talked about it earlier, until I see something from Ravens. I'm not going to give them a map. However, it is Vegas and it is control. I'm going to side with the fans on this one and give Vegas the W. I think London wins the control, and that is it. Vegas are looking much more strong when it comes down to their hard points. Standy had a phenomenal series versus Boston, went on like numerous 10 streaks. Versus Ravens, he could absolutely bring the hammer down once more. So with that, Vegas start off 2-0 in their efforts of trying to make the top 8. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the battle for LA. The Thieves taking on the Gorillas. This is always a fun matchup. A lot of history when we talk about these two franchises facing off against each other. And it also does have double points, which we love as well. The Thieves, they had a laughable series versus London. Quick 1-0 start for them. They do have that big win over Seattle as well, which was the 3-1. They win both the hard points, which for me was the biggest emphasis on that series overall. They also make a great comeback on that embassy, which was also nice for them. I don't know, just for Thieves right now, I think this is exactly what this team needs, which is early momentum. They win this series versus LAG. They are guaranteed to be in the winner's bracket for Major 4, which again, we all know the LAT land buff. I know the placements this year haven't been amazing outside of Major 2. So I think for them, starting off 3-0 is exactly what this roster needs, moving into a very, very fun series that will close out week number 2. We'll talk about that in a bit. And then for LAG, after coming out great versus Rocker and that opening Fortress hardpoint, they weren't really able to do anything after that. I'll be honest, LAG, very, very difficult team for me to pinpoint on what their strengths are. Sometimes they're winning hardpoints. They started off winning HPs, then they started winning S&Ds and controls, and then they come into this series, they win a hardpoint, but they don't win the S&D and the control. I've gone out on the radar saying that LAG for me are definitely one of my bottom tier teams when it comes down to LandO's tiers. I think I have London definitely now behind them, but LAG to me is right now at 11. So I don't really know. I will say though, one thing that does add a bit of interest to this, and I'm curious if the fan poll will apply to it, does not really, 92-7 in overall percentages. In the Battle of LA, historically, the Thieves have actually never beaten the Gorillas in franchise history. So the Battle of LA has always gone to LAG. Is this the first time that the Thieves are able to take it? So that is going to be a fun and interesting element when we talk about this matchup, when we talk about this series. They did play back in Major 2 qualifiers. It is when LAG had just made that roster change for the Academy team. LAG did win both of the hard points and also won that Search Destroy in Game 2. That has increased it, like I said, to 5-0. So is this the first time that Thieves take them down, or does LAG have a bit of magic here? It is. It's going to be the first time the Thieves end up winning the battle for LA. They are the better team. I think they're in better spirits. LAG is currently at 0-1. I think that now is going to be 0-2. Again, it's just a rough time right now for the Gorillas. I hope that they can start to find their identity again. But just versus the Thieves, a team that can quickly just add up game after game after game over you. I don't know. I just feel like LAG maybe could come out and still play close in this series. Maybe win a map potentially, but I am going to go with the Thieves all day long. Let's go and take a look at this one. OPTIC Texas versus NYSL. OPTIC are off to a wonderful start to the Major 4 qualifiers. They were in and out in week 1. They beat the London Royal Ravens pretty much in record time. And that was really it. But this is by far their biggest week. This is their biggest week here in Major 4. They've got NYSL as well as the LA Thieves to close out this week. I feel like, to be honest, if OPTIC Texas can go 2-0 this week, they stand a very good chance of actually finishing off this stage flawless, which would be wonderful for them. I mean, they could be potentially one of the only teams that goes 5-0. They do have LAG in week number 3, and they also have Boston. Breach is never going to be an easy team. They definitely have had some fun battles, especially lately at that Texas Major. They faced off twice. Boston beat them the first time. OPTIC beat them the second time. But I feel like if they're beating New York and if they're beating Thieves, they absolutely have the chance and probably will beat the Boston Breach. So with that in mind for Texas, huge week on the other side for NYSL. They are off of that series win versus Rocker. I think there is a chance for sure that Minnesota could actually win that game, possibly. But I do have right now New York at 2-0. I have OPTIC. Obviously, they are at 1-0, undisputed. Now, when we talk about the predictions for this game and look at the fan poll, 83% to 17%. That is definitely a bit of an OPTIC buff, but I think that is a nice little number to see for New York. I actually think this is a tough matchup for the Subliners because I think that this is a team that without a doubt relies on their hardpoint more than anything. And the same thing can technically be said for Texas. However, I think that they're actually meeting their match in that game mode. I think that OPTIC, to me, I like them more. If we're talking about 2 hardpoints, who's going to win 2 first? I would take Texas to do that. And so if I like OPTIC more in hardpoints, that then means I have to rely on New York's Search Destroy and New York's Control. As we've already talked about it in relation to their prior series, New York, can they win Expo Control now that Fortress is no longer there? Are they going to be able to play Hotel, play El Asilo consistently? And then on the other side of the coin here, when it comes down to Search Destroy, New York, how are they going to look, right? Because when it comes down to their Search Destroy, they are 1-4 in their last 5. They did win an El Asilo versus FaZe. That is wonderful, but it was not dominant. So with that in mind, how does New York play in Search? I think that is definitely a 50-50 in the S&Ds for me. I am also very curious to see how the controls look. OPTIC is in a wonderful mode right now when we talk about control. They are also not a team that was winning Fortress nor playing Fortress. So I think that their control map, their control map pool has definitely gotten better. So when we talk about the predictions for this series, like I said, it's really to me about the team who I like more in hardpoint, because I think S&D and control for me can definitely be a coin flip. And with that being the case, I do like Texas here. I do. I think I like Texas to win. If not the opening hardpoint, maybe the S&D and the control, and then maybe that game 4 potentially. But I am going to say that they win this in a 3-1 fashion. I think this is a very tight, very competitive series, one that definitely has the chance to go the distance and probably could. A lot of people would probably predict that. But I just like Texas a lot right now. I think that, based off the language that we've been hearing, how scrimmages have been going, which again, you have to always take those with a grain of salt. It does sound like they're in a great state. Like I said, I just feel like in their hard points, sometimes they are just rolling over rosters. But at the same time, sometimes if Texas don't win those hard points, they can definitely be dazed quite a bit. And maybe that's an opportunity for New York to strike. But I am going to go with OPTIC to win this. And then we jump in to Saturday. Jump into the final game of Saturday. There we go. Toronto Ultra versus the Atlanta FaZe. Toronto, what was that? Like, what was their opening week? 0-2. I'll be honest, I was very surprised. But what I saw in week one from the major four in week one of the major four qualifiers, don't get me wrong. Did they have a tough first two games? 100%, right? You're facing off against two very solid lineups. However, at the same time, they just were slow to wake up. Like, they go 0-2 down versus Boston. They go 0-2 down versus Seattle. Thankfully, their control was great, and they were able to answer in those game four hard points, but they lose both of the game fives. And now they start off 0-2. Don't get me wrong. Do I think that Toronto is still an unbelievably talented team? Absolutely. And that is my frustration with this, is that there is no, everything that you look at, whether it's KDs, whether it's just the way that they started off in series, whatever it is, everything shows you that they came into Major Four pretty much with their feet up a bit. Like, very happy that they just won a championship. Often, the common term is fat and happy. Like, hey, you know what? We just won a chip. It's Hicksy's first. It's Scrappy's first. You know what? We finally did it. And it's always difficult to kind of get your frame of mind back in. I don't know if it's just me. Now's not the time for that. Right now is not the time to, even for a moment, take your foot off the gas pedal. Because now you face off against Atlanta FaZe, who has the chance to allow for you to start off 0-3. And you have Florida, which should be a W. And then you got Vegas. And depending on how you're playing, Vegas is hungry. Like, Vegas is fighting. So there is a chance that if Toronto comes out slow, they still have yet to wake up. They could start off 1-4 and go 1-4 in Major 4. Then who knows what happens to them at the Major? Then who knows how that affects them at Major 5? All of those things. So to me, was not happy by any means with what I saw from Toronto. I was very frustrated with what I saw from Ultra because, like I said, this is not the time for that. Like, this is not the time to get excited about winning a championship, your first championship, and be like, yeah, we're good. This is not the time for that. And I'm not saying that that has happened, but like I said, starting off 0-2 in series, what does that tell you? You're not waking up. KDs across the board, not great. S&D, what is going on with their Search Destroy right now? Like, S&D at the Major looked fantastic. There were times where Jay and I was casting them, and it was like, what is happening here? Like, just moments where communication was not on point, moments where players would be in the middle of a team fight, instantly switch to another part of the map, and it just looks like the play is totally out of whack. They are 0-4 to kick off Major 4 qualifiers in Search Destroy. They are negative 33 in kills so far in this stage in Search to Destroy. I do feel like S&D will elevate this team or make them a flash in the pan. And I hope that that's not the case. I think that we have all looked at Toronto as such a promising team. We've all looked at Ultra as, like, you know what? Once they finally hit that gear, they're going to be a team that absolutely could win champs this year. And so you saw that, right? You saw that happen at Major 3. Stars aligned. Hicksy looks wonderful. Came into this team, instantly made a difference. Everybody's game has been elevated. And now they've started off Major 4 0-2. And like I said, it'd be different if it was game 5 losses, which it is game 5 losses. But to me, the biggest deal is that they started off 0-2 at both of those games. And so, I don't know. It's not a welcoming sight. I'll be honest, it has made me very frustrated. And I know I've said that multiple times. But this is not what you hope to see out of a team like this, is to be in any way now content or now like, you know what, we won a chip, we're good. I hate that mentality, and I hope that it's not the mentality that they have, because they're going to be in for a rude awakening if that mentality continues to live on. And now they're facing off against Atlanta FaZe. And we know for Atlanta, right? They are technically off of that series that they played. What was it? I forget who they played versus in their last game. Versus the Florida Mutineers. That's right. Where it went to a game 5. I think I mentioned it at the kind of like the last quote of the series was, Atlanta wins the series, but we definitely feel much better about Florida than we do Atlanta moving forward. And that is the reasoning for FaZe loses that Embassy Search Destroy. More specifically, they lose a Game 4 Embassy Hardpoint, which, to be honest, with the talent, with the players that they have, Embassy Hardpoint versus Florida, on paper, you should not. You should not lose that. You should not be losing Embassy Hardpoint. You beat them on Hotel, which was Florida's great map. Like, they were 3-0 on it as a team. You beat them on Hotel. Hardpoints lately, as we all know, have not been the strong suit for FaZe. I think this is probably the worst FaZe has looked at Hardpoint in CDL history. They have gone, they've gone 2-8 in their last 10 hard points. Atlanta, by the way, when we've had a series that has gone to a game 4 or game 5, which means that we've seen 2 hard points in a set, Atlanta has not won both hard points that were in a series in the last 16 series that have seen a game 4 or a game 5. Right? I hope that makes sense. So the last 16 times Atlanta FaZe has gone to a game 4 or a game 5 series, that of which there was 2 hard points in there, they've not won both of those hard points in the last 16 times that they have played. So that means that Atlanta is winning 1 or none of their hard points. And to me, the thing that I've noticed, I've gone through and looked at the numbers. It's a lot of tricky and weird stuff that's going on with Atlanta at times. They've seen success in rotating. At times, they've seen much better success in holds. The number one thing that has taken a huge downturn in their overall hardpoint gameplay is breaks. They've gone from the number 4 team to the number 5 team to now the number 9 team in breaks so far throughout this season. That's Major 1, Major 2, and Major 3, all taking it into account. So another thing that I've noticed is that whenever they have stage by stage either improved on rotations, they struggle with their holds. And when they're not great at rotations, they improve in their holds. So it almost feels like FaZe loves being in the mix so much that it's like the game has to be sped up to a level that of which they need to be going, breaking a hard point, and then holding it. Because if they are rotating early, they struggle to hold. Like that's where their issues come from, is that whenever they do rotate early, they don't know how to hold. So the way that they're playing the game is so break heavy. That is the way they see success. And the problem is that teams are identifying that. Not only are they rotating early, but they're recognizing if we just cut FaZe off of those breaks, if we nail down this rotation, right? If we do this or do that, when you know the tendencies and the typicalness of the other team, you know how to counter them. And FaZe's game plan right now, like we said, is all about their breaks. And as that has started to go down, you've seen their hardpoint game started to go down. Like I said, they were number 4, number 5 in breaks in the CDL. And like I said, obviously in hardpoint in Major 1, Major 2, they take that dip in Major 3 to number 9 overall in breaks, and they sit where they do in hardpoint. Like I said, 2-8 in their last 10. The biggest thing we talk about this series is not just hardpoint. It's not just, matchup wise frustrations, maybe a bit with both of these teams considering where they are. But it's also the race for the number 1 seed, right? That is the funniest part about all of this, is that we're critiquing the number 1 and the number 2 seed team in the game. The interesting part about all of this is that if FaZe wins this series, they separate themselves from Ultra by 30 points. So FaZe would distance themselves as the number 1 seed by 30 points. If Toronto ends up winning this series, right, they find themselves down by just 10 points to Atlanta FaZe, and they have a matchup tomorrow versus Florida. And if they're beating FaZe, they definitely stand a chance of beating the Florida Mutineers. And if that is the case, if Toronto wins this series, they stand a very, very good chance of tying Atlanta for the number 1 seed in points. So that is a huge, huge thing to look out for when it comes down to this game, is the indirect implications that we have on the number 1 seed, which is typically not even close when we talk about Atlanta FaZe, but this year it is. Predictions, right? When we talk about this matchup, I'm curious what the poll is looking like. 33.9 to 66.1. I think we can all agree, right, when we look at the game modes, which, don't always tell the story. Game mode wise, Toronto is favored to win those. When it comes down to the hard points, FaZe are 2-8 in their last 10. FaZe are favored to win the S&Ds. Toronto so far is 0-4 in Search Destroy in Major 4. Toronto is the best control team in the game. And despite what has been very slow starts to their series, they have at least been able to win control consistently, which just goes to show that they could almost win controls in their sleep sometimes. However, I think that when it comes down to vetoes for this, we actually could see a hotel control be played. The interesting part about that is that Atlanta, the last 2 times that they have played hotel control, they have smoke teams on it. They 3-0'd New York. They 3-0'd Florida. Toronto, they have played hotel and El Asilo so far. They have 3-1 Boston. They won 2 attacks versus Seattle in their last series on hotel control. Toronto was known on hotel to be the best defensive team in the game, yet lately they're winning attacks. And then for The Atlanta FaZe, I think they're the number 2 or number 3 team. I think they're the number 2 team on attacks on hotel controls. This is going to be a really, really interesting battle. That of which I feel like all eyes are going to be on the hotel control. And you could really say that FaZe have the chance to beat Toronto on it. You could also say at the same time, well, Toronto, they're the best hotel team. They're the best control team in the game. There was no way they lose that. Again, Toronto, they've been starting off slow in series. That is a great chance for Atlanta. If Atlanta can win the opening game 1 hardpoint, that's massive, right? Because you absolutely think that they can win one of those next 2 search destroys. And if they do that, then all eyes come on the control. This is a hard one. I know I've given a lot of nods to Atlanta here. I will say, I think that Toronto wake up this week. I think that Toronto awake from their slow CDL slumber after winning the Major 3 championship. I think they wake up this week. I think they absolutely should win the hardpoint versus Atlanta. If they do that, they look good to win the control. And I think that I like Toronto, if they're playing well, to also win that game for a hardpoint versus a FaZe team that is struggling to win HPs. As we know for Toronto, when they have won, when they are winning, they look good in pretty much every mode. So I like Toronto more right now than I do Atlanta FaZe. And so, like I said, this has massive implications by locking in this prediction. I think I'm also locking in Toronto to catch Atlanta for that number 1 seed. To me, all eyes are on this game. To me, this game is probably these 2, maybe these 3, these 4 down here, I don't know, are the most exciting games that we have this week. But I am especially very interested in that Toronto versus Atlanta game. We got to breeze through the next few ones here. It's talking about Sunday now. LAG versus Las Vegas Legion. I have the Gorillas off the loss versus the Thieves. Like I said, I'll be honest, I just don't really know what to expect from LAG when it comes down to just their game mode strengths right now, what they should be, what they are. Las Vegas Legion, they should be 2-0. They should be taking down the London Royal Ravens. And then coming into this game versus LAG, they should be looking pretty solid, should be looking strong. The interesting part for me about Vegas is that when it comes down to this game versus the Gorillas, now at this point, the numbers will be different. The numbers will be adjusted. We know LAG at times their strengths have been in hardpoint. The interesting part though for Vegas is that they are technically the number 10 team in hardpoint rank, yet they have won 6 of their last 7, and in 9 of Vegas's 11th, why can I not say that? In 9 of Las Vegas Legion's 11 series, is that right? In 9 of their last 11 series, they've won at least 1 hardpoint. There it is. We finally got it out, which is very impressive. It just goes to show that Vegas is not going to go down easy. This to me has the chance to be the Gorillas' last ride. If they lose this series, it just feels like this maybe could be their season already, which is crazy because we're already talking about that for London. We can absolutely say it for LAG. If LAG loses to Thieves, which I have them losing, they lose to Vegas, they have OPTIC, and they have Seattle, which again is just a recipe for disaster, if I'm being honest with you. I do think there was a chance that the Gorillas could actually win this series. I am very much going to look at this result versus Thieves because I just think the sense of urgency is there for LAG as well. I don't think that they're a bad team. Like I've said that multiple times. I just don't think that the players mix super well together, especially at this point in the year. I feel like when it comes down to this matchup specifically, I think the LAG are going to make it very close. I feel like this maybe has a chance to go to a game 5 round 11. Just given the nature of the timing of how this goes, I am going to give the W to the Vegas Legion though. I am going to say that they win this in a game 5. I feel like it's a dicey game. I feel like it's one that Vegas are going to have to work for. But I think this one has the ability to be tighter than a lot of people think that it will be. We will see though. So let's go and talk quickly about Florida versus Toronto. I do have Florida off the loss versus Seattle, and it's not going to get any easier for the Mutineers. I am worried that Florida could almost be in a similar spot to the Ravens last stage, which is that, you're close, but just not close enough. This will be Vikel's second series with the Mutineers, so maybe that they can start to tighten things up a little bit, start to get more comfortable with each other now with this new lineup. For Toronto, I think if they did wake up versus Atlanta, then now they would be 1-2. for Toronto, this is a must-win series. You cannot go down 1-3, and then they would have Vegas Legion for their last series, which is very, very dicey. That's going to be a blast of a game to watch. Standy versus Scrappy, all eyes on that game without question. And then for Florida, I think when it comes down to their final games, they've got Toronto and also have Vegas for their last series. So if Florida lose this, they would start off things. Or I think I said Toronto. They're playing Toronto. They would obviously be 0-4. It's just hard. It is. It's hard to not go with Toronto, especially after picking them to win versus Atlanta FaZe. Is there a chance? Is there a little bit of me that thinks that maybe Florida can start to put the pieces together? Yes. But I am going to say that Toronto wins this game. Like I said, to me, my prediction is that Toronto wakes up and they're able to win both of these games. They go 2-0 this week. And from there, we've got our final game here of week number 2, a dicey one indeed. OPTIC Texas versus the LA Thieves. Now, I have both teams actually listed as undefeated coming into this series. I have OPTIC beating New York prior to this matchup, which would make them 2-0. I feel pretty good about that prediction. LAT, I have them beating Gorillas, which would put them at 3-0. I feel very confident in that prediction. So I would say the odds, at least in my eyes, would have both of these teams meeting at a point that of which they are both undefeated. And I honestly think, looking at the remainder of the schedule for both of these teams, so like I said, OPTIC's currently 2-0 in my predictions. They face off against Thieves. After that, they have LAG, they have Boston. I think they win both of those, especially if they're beating the Thieves. For LAT, their game after OPTIC Texas is Minnesota. Rocker's looking better, but I don't know if they can beat the Thieves, especially if the Thieves are beating teams like OPTIC Texas, like Seattle Surge, for example. So I truly think that the team that actually wins this series will finish flawless and might be the number 1 seed moving in to the Major 4 tournament, which would do wonders for both of these franchises. It would do wonders for OPTIC Texas's confidence. It would do wonders for LAT, considering that they have not had the greatest land placements. So this is a huge game, right? This, to me, potentially, like I said, is the battle for the number 1 seed. I actually want to take a look at where other teams are. So like I said, Vegas Legion, there's a chance that where they could actually maybe compete to finish off. That they have a chance to maybe finish flawless. We'll see if that ends up going that way or not. They still have Toronto. So I think the Vegas, who are technically undefeated, they get knocked off that mark. New York, they've only just started off 1-0. I have them losing to Texas, which would make them no longer undefeated. I think the Thieves actually beat Minnesota, which means that the Minnesota Rocker would no longer be undefeated. So the two teams who to me would be at this point undefeated are the Thieves and OPTIC Texas. So that does cement the point that I do feel like the winner of this series probably is the number 1 seed, which is crazy to think about. Now, I don't know. We kind of know, right? For Texas, they played 1 game so far. They wiped the floor with the Ravens. I think that they do take that series versus New York, that of which the hard points are incredibly important for them. Obviously, I'm thinking that they're going to be in great spirits when it comes to that. On the other side for Thieves, they have had a great run so far when it comes to hard point. We know that versus Las Vegas Legion at the Major 3 tournament, they absolutely choked when it came down to that hotel hard point, choked the biggest lead, I think, in CDL history. When it came to HP. So I think the big emphasis for them was like, hey, let's just get back to our hardpoint game. They are 3-0 so far. They dominated London on Mercado. They destroyed Seattle in the Hydro hardpoint. They beat them bad at the Embassy hardpoint as well. I have them probably winning both of the hardpoints versus LAG, which would make them at this point probably 5-0, if not 4-0. So both teams, to me, it's going to be about the hardpoints. S&D, I think, actually could be up in the air. I think I like Texas maybe a little bit more on the S&D, just given Thieves' history. But Thieves could be looking to be in a great moment when we talk about Search Destroy for them as well. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'll be honest, I just think that every mode has the ability to be won by either team. I think this is just straight up, who do I think is going to walk away with this series? Fan poll, 70% to 30%. The interesting thing that you can take a look at actually is these teams' prior series against each other. You can see these 3 right here have actually all been this season. Thieves are 2-1 versus OPTIC so far throughout this year. I don't know, like, this just to me is just going to be an absolute battle. I think that I am going to give the slight nod and maybe just the game 5 victory maybe to the Thieves. I think I'm going to give it to the LA Thieves. I think it's going to be a fun game. Obviously, like I said, I have it going to a game 5, so obviously it's going to be wild. I don't know. I just have a feeling that the Thieves are going to come out very strong in this qualifier. At this point, they'd be 3-0. They could smell blood in the water. They could smell that first seed maybe coming to them. I think that OPTIC are still a very, very talented roster. I think it's undoubted. I have them, still being undefeated coming into this game. But I just like the Thieves a little bit more. I don't know. Maybe it's just about we're entering into the end of the season, where the Thieves last year in Vanguard started to put the pieces together. I'm going to give the Thieves the win here. I think that they not only win these series versus LAG and OPTIC Texas, but I think that they finish off 5-0. I really do. I think if they're winning both of these games, they probably beat Minnesota as well. And with that, Minnesota ends up getting taken down, so the Thieves would have the #1 seed. We will see if that is the case or not, but these are my predictions. I'm going to lock these in, and feel free, folks, to let me know your thoughts. I would love to know your guys' thoughts on some of these predictions. Make sure to stay tuned to the comments below, where you guys can answer some fun questions that I'm going to have for you guys there. But like I said, always love to hear your guys' thoughts. Love to hear your own predictions down in the comments below, so do not hesitate to talk to me. Do not hesitate to say whether or not my prediction was right or wrong. Love to hear your opinion as well. So stay tuned for more content. Thank you guys so much for checking out this video. I'll see you for another episode of LandO's Lock-ins next week. Same time, same place. Take it easy. I'll see you guys back on the channel very soon.